Well, students, welcome to our really first official class. Last week's kind of the warm-up week, so this is one of what we call the hard-working weeks, and man, it just is going to be coming at you. One person said he thought it'd be like drinking out of a faucet, and he's probably right, or a hose. Anyway, today's quick note, Monday, tomorrow, September 5th is the last day to drop the non-credit, and anybody's in class, you need to be dropping. Depending if you're going to drop, you need to do it now. You really need to do it now. That includes a non-credit and continuing education. And 6 of you have heard from us today, so we're trying to get status clarified. Next week is energy week there, and you'll have several modules that you're going to be looking at here for Energy Week, and we got it written down here someplace when I find them. But anyway, busy week. You got about 7 modules to look at. One is recommended that you don't have to listen to as far as that goes, but it's there. That's the marching orders. I think our chart does a nicer job, Jim, when we come to it here, as far as what's due this week on dry matter intake. We've had 2 or 3. We have 2 of you have submitted homework already. Remember, it's not due until next Tuesday. So good to see it, and he did very well. Both students did an excellent job. So don't have to wait till Tuesday to send them in. I'd be glad to start grading them this week and this weekend as far as that goes. We're going to do a quick update on dairy dry matter intake. Jim's got a tip, and then we'll do the Spartan demonstration, and hopefully be all done before 4 o'clock rolls around here in Illinois time. Anyway, here's the marching orders. You can see the dates. Jim will each week move that yellow bar down, so you can see today is dry matter intake. That's what our discussion. Hopefully you listen to those 4 modules from last week. Energy has got, like I said, a boatload of them there. There's a couple on fat. There's some carbohydrates. There are some on energy densities. There's all kinds of good stuff there. So again, notice next Sunday night, you should be done with the quiz, the forums, and then the following Tuesday before this class starts, because I will discuss the homework next Tuesday, where especially there's some points that we have to be looking at, but so far we seem to be doing a great job. Okay, here's your form for this week, and I know one of you have already responded to it. Dan Derriman reports that his high group of cows, Holstein cows, are averaging 82 pounds of milk, and they're eating 42 pounds of dry matter. What do you think about this? If you're his consultant, his nutritionist, and how'd you reach your conclusion? Remember, you have the word count there, and should have some fun with this one. Should have some fun with them. So that's your form that's coming up that you should have by next Sunday night as far as that goes. I think we're all pretty well squared away on this, Jim. Is that right? Paying?
Right. You sent out emails to everybody. If you're going to do it by credit card, just re-register and pick credit this time.
Okay, we should be good to go. And hopefully we had 6 people that we're trying to run down on the program. Jim, what's this technical issue?
This is just if you have problems. In the past, we've had students say, I have a problem on a page, and that doesn't help very much. So if you can tell me which class you're in, the section or week, and the page URL, and specifically what's the problem, and it'll help deal with the problem much quicker.
So far, not many problems?
Not many. One person said they had a problem logging in, but without knowing. If you're logged in from like work or some public locations, they actually block sites. So it depends on firewalls and stuff. The other thing is, if you ever have a problem logging in, maybe try a different browser would be the other suggestion I would have.
Okay, very good. And there's 47 of you, so we'll keep all this in line. Hopefully we'll do well. I always kind of, in this class, some of you are in the other class, this class I always have a thought for the day. Carries over from a professor I had at the University of Wisconsin, and I love this one here. It says, chance favors the prepared mind. So hopefully after this class today and the next 4, your mind will be prepared for whatever you're going to be doing. So why do we spend a little bit of time on dry matter intake? And certainly we think it's a key question. In fact, we've got a Hutjens Dairyman webinar you can go to if you want to that talks specifically about dry matter and different types of animals, because dry matter is where the nutrients are. So really, remember, we are delivering pounds or kilograms of nutrients, not a percent. And so dry matter, how many kilograms of protein do I have? Well, it depends on the dry matter intake times the concentration as far as that goes. Dry matter is important because that is dry matter is organic matter. Organic matter, if it's digestible, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the class, that means it's available for both microbial yield and the lower gut absorption. And of course, microbial yield means what? VFAs, and it means amino acids as far as that goes. Dry matter is also important because at some point the cow stops eating. She is filled up or her rate of passage is shifted around, and as a result, that really limits our cow. And of course, that impacts rumen environments such as SARA, which stands for subacute rumen acidosis, and such things as health. If we have low dry matter intakes, our cows at greater risk for fat mobilization and ketosis. So high dry matter intake can increase feed costs, it can change feed efficiencies, and can improve or decrease economics on the farm.
Okay, before you get to this poll, let me launch a different poll real quick just to find out if everybody has installed the ration balancing program. We didn't have a slide, and I figured we'd forget it if we don't do it now. So just let me know if you have a ration balancing program installed, tested, and ready to go, or if you're planning on installing this week. And you have one installed, but you're having problems, or if you're going to use a ration balancing program on somebody else's computer, or you haven't decided yet. You just really figured you didn't need it yet, so you didn't do anything yet.
Okay, we got about 88% in. We'll give you another. We have about 2 people missing in action here, and now we got 1 person missing in action. You're holding up the whole program, whoever you are.
That could be me. Let me
Okay, let's go in and
submit and
close.
100%. All right. So real quick, looks like everybody but 1 person has it installed, test ready to go, and the other person's planning on installing this week. So, all right. So let me hide that and go to the actual poll question. There.
Okay. So this should be a fun one here. There is a right answer here, by the way. Which factor is most important to increase dry matter intake? This is primarily in lactating cows. So number 1 is avoid rumen acidosis. Number 2, increase milk yield. Number 3, increase forage dry matter intake. Increase body size. So which one of these is most important that will determine dry matter intake? So let's go ahead and vote on this one here. And we're off and running. And it's kind of fun. It's kind of one of those fun polls. There, in many cases, all answers are right. In this case, these are all 4 good answers, by the way, but one of them is more correct than the other one as far as that goes. And we've got 87% of the vote in. We are going to wait for you Democrats. You're going to be a little slow here. Fine. And let's close it. And we got 88% in. And bingo, as we would say, 57% got the right answer. Increased milk production is factor most important in increasing dry matter intake. Yes, rumen acidosis would probably decrease that, or if it's severe acidosis, could actually increase it because of high rates of passage and poor digestibility. Increase forage dry matter intake. Yes, that can have a negative effect on dry matter intake, but not nearly as much as milk production. Body weight size, sorry, you lose on that one there. Body weight has a very small impact on dry matter intake, but it is one of the factors, as you saw in one of the modules. So Jim, nice job. And now do I have to click on PowerPoint to get back here? And here we go. And I think we are off and running. Nice thumb rules. Some of you may just want to look at. When you use computer software programs, you always have to ask, well, what are the guidelines we have? And so you can see for high producing cows, 4% of body weight, and you can read the rest of them on down. The neat thing to see that is young animals, as a percent of body weight, they eat. You got to remember that, and we'll do more of that if you took the calf and heifer. Some of you are in that class. Young calves eat more as a percent of body weight. In fact, when you start getting into milk-fed calves, the number gets quite high. And as they get older, the good news is they eat less, but they're bigger, they can hold more. So in terms of pounds of dry matter, it works just the opposite as the percentages here when it gets to heifers. We tend to do this and say, what are some of the important factors? In this case, Dr. Grummer's presentation, retired from the University of Wisconsin. Certainly, I thought, why is dry matter important? We already discussed part of that there, the 3 risks, and that's a powerful statement there. When dry matter is low after calving, especially in the first 3 to 4 weeks, it affects immunity, and that's really, really important. Cow health, immunity, and the emphasis to use fewer drugs is becoming a bigger factor. If these cows need energy and genetically they've been bred to produce milk, they will will start mobilizing fat. That leads fatty acid to fatty liver and ketosis. And of course, the displaced abomasum. If you don't get dry matter intake after these animals, don't keep them filled up. The abomasum can do some unique things. And as he points out, differences between cows and heifers. We'll show it later. We're going to come back and visit these points there. The module optimizing dry matter intake. We're going to come back and show you a couple PowerPoints on this one here. This is an interesting one that pretty well shows, where a pound of dry matter energetics and a pound of dry matter comes right out of the NRC as far as that goes. So a pound of dry matter means you should get around 2.5 pounds more milk. You can do that strictly by looking at the energy density of a pound of dry matter, depending on which system you're using there as far as energy concentrations, and that's what's in a pound of 3.5 fat corrected milk there. You can see the formula. There's your answer. You can see the big driver down there, dry matter intake, body weight, and milk production. And when you do that math there, you're going to discover that the first number is going to, the body weight is going to give you about 10 mcals, and milk is going to give you anywhere from 30 to 40, depending how much milk these cows are giving there. I like this term here. Maybe you don't want to use it, but I love it. I call it marginal dry matter intake. That's that last pound of dry matter that your dairy cow is going to consume. And as you saw from the last PowerPoint, that can support 2+ pounds more milk. And so as a result, it says a pound of dry matter right now today is about 10 cents here in Illinois. Milk is at about $16. That might be a freckle high, but it's right around maybe more closer to $15 milk. And if it's $16 milk, that's 32 cents back for 10-cent investment. That's a pretty neat return on investment of 22 cents for a dime going in. So I basically say you want to optimize dry matter intake in high producing cows in today's marginal milk price situation we're at. Here are tables you can look at. I want you to focus on, let's just pick one, Jim. I'm going to pick this one right here. This is NRC 80. I like this table here. I like this table. You'll notice that if I take a cow giving 88 pounds of 4% fat corrected milk, this one will predict 53 pounds of dry matter. Now remember that number. Over here is kilos for you European folks, and we have about 9 different countries in this class here this year, Jim. Now here is the new NRC, and you can see now that number is 58. So huge increase, a huge increase. Most of these are based on studies that are done at universities where cattle are usually in individual feeding stalls or in keel and gates or something like that. So that's a big time number. Big time number here. Notice up here we got 17 weeks of lactation, because you'll see a bit later here that'll have an impact on dry matter intake as well. So that's one of the first things in this class you have to think about. Whose table are you working off of, especially when you're not sure which system, which model you're using. I love this table here. It was in your material. It's an older table, but it simply indicates dry matter intake after calving. And of course, you can see first lactation cows, mature cows over here. Notice the rate here. It's slower going up than you have over here on older cows. The numbers here in parentheses are kilograms, again, for some of our people who are unclassed and on the metric system. And of course, you can see a dramatic difference between heifers and milk cows. And that's one reason why in some of these larger farms, you're going to see first lactation groups of cows, because these heifers eat less and they're less aggressive as far as that goes. Powerful table to answer the question, what is your fresh cow pens achieving out there? Because you've got computer software programs that will predict this number and keep us up to date. Minimizing sorting. This table put together, I should say, a board from Randy Shaver at the University of Wisconsin. And you can see our big mixer out here that's piping in the water here in this TMR mixer. Generally speaking, most people are adding increments of 7 or 8 pounds. That's about a gallon per cow per day. See what that does. And there's always going to be a sweet spot on the farm where the dry matter is just optimal. And adding water is a nice way to adjust that one. You can see other rules here to increase dry matter intake, to reduce sorting, particle size. Actually getting them a bit shorter is good. If we're going to be honest with you folks, the long particle size, we would take that 2 inch off that PowerPoint and say 1 inch. That's about all the longer I want it to be as far as that goes, because that's going to get you at about 1 inch is going to get you at about 22 millimeters, and your cow will chew feed until it gets down to 10 to 11 to 12 millimeters as far as that goes. So you can look at those rules at your leisure. We want to make sure we stay on schedule, on task here. Jim, pretty neat photo there, isn't it? Jim shot that with your drone picture out there at one of our farms here in Illinois. Very powerful point that I will not walk you through because of time, but I think the one we're really looking at here is right, the feeding environment. And we're looking at things like lameness, bunk space, bunk management, temperature, those kinds of things. These other ones that can really restrict cow intake. And cow crowding is a huge factor because guys are really trying to keep as many cows going in the tank as they can in this crowding. And our thumb rule is once you get over about 20%, you are in no man's land. Once you get over 20%, and 10% crowding is fine except for heifer pens and fresh pens and close-up pens. So you went through this PowerPoint before. This is a fun one to talk about, but we had that in the module as well. You didn't have this one, a PowerPoint that I got from Dr. Rick Grant, and now you can see here's my cow, and she's eventually going to get filled up. So the question is, you know, how full is full in this cow? And then, of course, she begins to ruminate, cud chew, and she reduces it back on down. So this dynamics such thing as rumen fill and forage length and rate of passage come into play. We'll come back and visit this one next week, but we're going to be looking at fiber values. And the one we really want to feature right now, and this is my magic number right here, U, undigestible neutral detergent fiber, organic matter at 30 hours. That's the one I'm going to focus on here today, because I'm going to go to the next PowerPoint, and it says that, nope, it doesn't say that. Back up, Mike. We'll get it right. Okay, now the first one we're going to look at, Jim, you can see I really practiced this one last night, is an NDF digestibility at 30 hours. That's very powerful. What's 30 hours? That's a normal residence time of feedstuffs in the digestive tract of a lactating cow. So you can see the NDF 30. This is the average number coming in here for corn silage, right around 54. 54, you can see this is coming from Dairyland Labs here in Wisconsin, and that gives you a rough idea of what that number would be. That's important because you can see that NDF digestibility at 30 hours varies. It varies. You can see here sits my alfalfas, here sits my corn silage, and here sits my BMR corn silage. And so you can see if you're looking for digestibility, and why is that important, kids in this class? Because that dictates microbial yield and availability for nutrients to be digested. So you can see, if you want to get in a big argument, you can see why some farmers here in the Midwest and out east are using BMR corn silage, because we're going to increase digestibility by about 10 units. And that means what? It simply means that for every 1 point increase in NDF digestibility in the forage program, you're going to pick up here about 0.4 of a pound of dry matter or about 1/2 pound of milk. Huge, huge. So that BMR says you should get about 4 pounds more milk from BMR corn silage. You know what the research says? Bingo, it does. It does do that. Now, here's another cut on that, looking at corn silage from a Minnesota paper. Slightly different numbers there, but the take-home message is pretty clear. NDFD becomes very important in terms of dry matter. Now, let's go, and I thought this is where I was, but I wasn't. Anyway, here comes that UNDF. Now, UNDF stands for undigestible neutral detergent fiber. And some of you in class last spring saw this PowerPoint, and it simply says that if this number is too high, then I can't get enough feed into the cow. She literally becomes filled up on forages. If this number is too low, then feeds can go through the ration too quickly, and that's called the straw effect as far as that goes. And some of you are going to see in the next issue of Hord's Dairyman a classic paper presented this summer at ADSA looking at changing these numbers around by looking at such things as UNDF and particle size. The guideline is you're going to get about 0.35 to 0.4% of the cow's body weight as a forage NDF 30 here. So that makes about 5 pounds for a Holstein cow, about 4 pounds for a Jersey cow. That's UNDF 30 at forage sources only, because this is a bummer right here. We don't really know how these other feeds are going to interact. We know fuzzy cottonseed floats in the rumen. Soy hulls are ground very, very fine before they're pelleted. Citrus pulp, beet pulp, they all have different dynamics. So this one is here, and that becomes a very useful number, I think, in looking at fill factors and dry matter intake. And now this is just the reciprocal of the digestible dry matter you just saw 2 minutes ago, just the opposite. Again, you can see, again, a very good number for UNDF, BMR. So some of you got BMR corn silage out there, look at your test results and see if that is of the dry matter. If that's around 6 or 7%, here's your normal corn silage around 10 or 11, and here's your other feed. So there's another one of your take-home assignments I can't grade for you, but gives you a little idea what's going on out here as well. And why did that happen? Okay, now let's look at lead factors. How much do you overfeed in the herd? In other words, if the herd is averaging 70 pounds of milk, do you balance for 70 pounds of milk? Most researchers and research would suggest no. The academic answer is 1 standard deviation of that group is the target. And Minnesota did a study a couple of years ago, looked at that. That's typically 12 pounds of milk. So the standard deviation is if you had a really high string of cows and the range was wide or small, that would make this number higher or lower depending on the standard deviation there. I would argue that once you, Jim and I, build a ranch for 80 pounds of milk, the only way you get more intake of nutrients is dry matter intake. Only way you're going to get there. You just can't be putting more fat, more amino acids, more starch in there, because eventually you're going to be having a pig diet instead of a dairy cow diet. Years ago, Virginia Tech developed these standards. For a one-group TMR, the lead factor would be 30%. So if you had a 70-pound one-group TMR, that'd be about 90 pounds of milk. If I took and split that into 2 groups, so let's say 80 and 60, now you can see the high group would be 95, low group would be around 66. And you had 3 groups, not including heifers, be a 10% lead factor. You can see the dynamics here. I'm not sure I would believe these here. More about that a little bit later on in the class. Another way to look at dry matter intake that I love to use is called feed efficiency or dairy efficiency, and that is pounds of 3.5 fat-corrected milk, and there's your formula on the bottom, per pound of dry matter consumed, which means weigh-backs are taken off. And I would say a good number is 1.5. So the question a lot of people ask is, are my cows eating too much dry matter? Or are they not eating enough? And that's what feed efficiency will do. And in fact, the next table that will come up, and I think it's going to, here are all the factors that affect dry matter intake. And we're not going to walk you through them here. I think there's a module on it that you could have listened to. I'll look at that a bit later. If not, Jim and I will get that to you here. But the biggies here that affect this feed efficiency is going to be such things as forage, feed digestibility, forage quality, days in milk, mastitis, and rumen acidosis. Up there as well. One people argued with me and said, well, feed efficiency doesn't have a lot of economics built in it. Give me a break. Take a look here. Most herds in Illinois are going to be sitting right here, somewhere between 1.4 pounds of 3.5 fat corrected milk. And by the way, jerseys. This formula works very well for jerseys and brown Swiss as long as you correct for butterfat. Correct for butterfat. And so you can see if I got a herd that's at 1.4, and if I could take them up to 1.6, that is going to be a net return of 40 cents per cow per day, because you can see they eat less dry matter to get that job done. And in fact, if I look at that, Jim, carefully enough, that's more like 60 cents if I look at it very, very carefully as well. I thought this one was coming up quicker, and I would have reshuffled the deck last night. I thought I did, but obviously I did. These are nice values that come from Norman St. Pierre at The Ohio State University. And here's another nice way of looking at feed efficiency. If you're averaging 65-pound tank average on 1.4, if you're 80 pounds, 1.5, if you get up to these really high-producing herds averaging 90 pounds of milk, then the feed efficiency number moves up. So that's a nice number to look at as well, to try to get a feeling of the relationship of milk yield to dry matter intake. What happens if my cows are eating too much? Well, here's a checklist that you can take a look at, and we'll be wrapping up here pretty quickly, Jim, so start warming up your voice over there. Certainly, one thing is to make sure that the numbers are right. Sometimes people will say, well, my cows are eating too much, I'll just pull them back to what the chart said they should eat. And in many cases, you'll give up milk. So something is going on in that herd, and you can look at the checklist here, look at your feed efficiencies, and look at your fecal scores and effective fiber signs for abnormal digestibility that's going on in the herd. And so, Jim, I'm wrapping up here and said this is the forum that we're going to use for 2 weeks from now. So remember the first forum I showed you, that's due this coming Sunday. This one has to do with net energy. Sometimes we give you a quick peek at that, because when you're listening to modules, you'll say, oh, that's where the question is coming from, and that'll save you a little bit of time. And it simply says, do you use or not use the net energy value of the ration as listed on the output sheet? And Jim and I will show that to you here in just a few seconds here, such as a 0.71 mcals per pound of dry matter. Explain why you did or did not use that. And again, I think it's there's no right answer here, but I have my answer, and you'll see that 2 weeks later after we close the form. So, Jim, I think we've gotten through all the material. We went through some of it fairly quickly. Some of it already has been discussed with you on your modules, except for that the sorting one and the one on when cows eat too much, as far as that goes. So, Jim, I'm going to turn the program over to you for your tips for today.
All right. What we're going to do is go through a few PowerPoints pretty quickly, and then we'll demonstrate it more when we go over to Spartan. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is the feed library. And ideally, if you want to make your life easier, Spartan comes with some master feed library, and it has a little bit of everything in there. Most people are not feeding apples or some of the more exotic feed ingredients. So what I would suggest doing is create your own feed library, and you can import feeds from the master feed library. And that way, as you go through and start doing rations, you don't have to dig through all the feeds that are in the master feed library. As you go through and you update feeds, so let's say that you have a corn silage and you have it tested every month. What you may want to consider doing is in your feed library, your personal one, is to update the feed. What this will do is make a duplicate of the previous, like corn silage, and then you can update the nutrient profile to match the test results. And this will give you a history. So if you want to go back and you notice that 4 or 5 months ago, the cows were milking different, you can see what corn silage you were using back then. The nutrient composition, this is a sort of easier way as you're developing your rations if you need to go in and tweak a feed ingredient. And this is what it's going to look like. It brings up this master table. So you can just go in and go to whatever, like crude protein. If you needed to tweak it up or down, you could do it from this chart and then hit OK. The problem with Spartan is there's no undo. So if you tweak this and then go back to your ration and go, oh, I didn't want to do that, you just can't hit undo. You got to go back and put it back to where it's supposed to be.
And Jim, I guess I would just jump in and say, let's say you're going to put let's say a Cargill or Land O'Lakes protein supplement in. What I would do is I would pick something like soybean meal and start there, because look at all the numbers you got to put in here. And in most cases, you're not going to have those numbers. So if you're buying a protein supplement or a complete pellet, then I would pick something in the library that's kind of similar to it, because otherwise you're just going to have a whole bunch of zeros in there, and that's going to be a problem.
All right, breed relationships. Really, I haven't found much use for this. Probably the big thing is it gives you a dollar amount per mcal. So if you're trying to tweak your ration and figure out what ingredients is going to be the cheapest for energy, do you use them?
No, I don't use them very much on this relationship here, because I don't find much use for them. But cost per mcal be useful if you're going to go out and buy a feed and versus something you may have on the farm.
As you go through using Spartan, you're going to notice different indicators, and all this tells you is like which one's the active record as you're typing or selecting. Active record that's being edited. So like you're adding how many pounds of that ingredient you're putting in. If you're selecting multiple items, this will show you that what items were selected. Of course, selected in active and inactive. And I believe, oh, the last thing is in the bottom right-hand corner of Spartan, if you want to switch between pounds and kilograms, mcals and megajoules, and concentration or the amount, you just double click on any one of these and it'll switch to the other.
You really want to remember these because they're going to be very powerful because at times you want to be, for example, when we do trace minerals, you want to be in the metric system. If you're doing DCAD, you want to be able to go back and forth. So you really, very powerful tools, especially from our European students here. You're not used to them to the pound system. Now you can do everything in metrics and be much easier for you.
Do you want to switch to Spartan?
Yeah, I'll switch you to Spartan. I'm in charge over here. So we want to go over to Spartan. And
all right. And he wanted to kill this.
Yeah, we're eventually going to come back here, but I just want to get us started up. So
right.
Jumping in. So
let me talk the feed library real quick. So what you would do is go to File, New Feed Library, click on that. Then it's going to ask you where you want to add feeds from to create your new library. So I would pick the default master feed library. Now you can start coming in here, and if you're not using almond hulls and half this other stuff, you don't need to add it. Normally I'll go through and, oh, let's try this one. I haven't ever really used this. And that's not very helpful. All right, so go through, you can select a feed type. So like corn silage. If I want to select, okay, normally I have normal corn silage, and I can double click on that, and it should double click on that. And it doesn't work for double clicking. We'll add selected alfalfa silage. I can pick whatever one I want to do there. So I want it immature, I can add selected. Anyway, you just keep on going through all the ingredients that you use. And then when you hit OK, it'll save that, and you save it as your own feed library. And then you can tweak it or add things as you need it. All right, so I'm going to get out of that. And do you want to do a new ration?
Yeah, we're going to go through a new ration. For some of you, this could be boring, but away we go. So, but you're going to have to do this eventually for the final exam. So Jim is going to toggle and show you the various choices you have. If you got crossbreds, you can then go to like a mid-sized breed if you wish. We're going to stay with Holsteins here, but you can see the choices you have. Notice every time you want to make a choice, Jim is going to hit OK. And now we come down to
go through this real quick.
Yep, we're going to look at different kinds of rations. We can do lactating heifers and dry cow late pregnant heifers. So again, those are your choices. We then go up, and these are automatically brought up by the Spartan program here. Stage of lactation, Jim, you want to just toggle that one and just show everybody up there what we have. We have these 5 different stages here. The thing to remember that if you do fresh and early lactation, dry matter intake will be suppressed because cows do not maximize dry matter intake. So if you want to take that out of the equation, stay with mid lactation cows. And he's going to go back and put mid lactation cows in there because I want to use the NRC 2001 number. Lactation numbers are pretty self-explanatory, Jim. I guess if you toggle up or toggle down, it'll go up 1, 2, or 3, and we're going to go 3 because I don't want to go 1 or 2 because it's gonna grow to mature body weight. I don't want to mess with that in my program here today, but you can work there. Days in milk, again, I want to stay over 90 days because I believe, Jim, if I recall correctly, 90 days is when dry matter depression is occurring in this program here, which does happen, no question about it. And now some of our newer, our modern cows and big farms, it's not 90 days. They're maxing out dry matter intakes by days 45 and 50. Next, you put in the total body weight, mature body weight. Notice they are the same here. That's what should be happening with a mature cow. If you do not have the total body weight is less than 1499 in this example here, then what's going to happen is that we're going to grow her. we're going to grow her as far as that goes. So those are important numbers because that'll in the final exam that'll cause you some problems if you don't get the if you don't get the body weights correctly, because then Spartan wants to grow the cow as far as that goes. More about that a bit later in body condition score. Next, we're going to come down to a target milk. Let's put the actual milk in here. We'll put in 70 pounds, Jim, in actual milk here, 70 pounds of actual milk in here. And then a lead factor, we'll put our 12 pounds in there. That'd be 82 pounds. There's my one standard deviation. I'm assuming it's a standard deviation. Butter fat's okay. We weren't going to mess with that. Although if you're going to do a Holstein nowadays, the Holstein test is 3.82. Let's just leave it at 3.5. But if you're going to use the 2017 butter fat for Holsteins, it's up to 3 point, as I mentioned earlier, true protein. Put that down to 3.0. Basically, that will be, and that's pretty close to where it is today. This is true protein. Beware of that for those of you in Europe, Mexico. You folks have total or crude protein as far as that goes. Lactose, you can change that. I'm not going to change that number there. Milk price, we'll put in $15, and that is per 100 pounds. So he's going to put a 1 in there someplace. And then actual dry matter intake. I'm going to go down and look below there because already it's predicted here that the predicted dry matter intake is, it says it's going to be 55. A predicted adjustment dry matter intake. Jim, help me out on that one.
Well, remember, it's still on the next screen. It'll have the body condition score and the NCAF and all that are fun stuff.
Okay, so let's just put 50 in there for now for fun. 50 pounds, and we'll see how bad I guess that was. Now he's getting it okay. We're going to store that all, Jim. And now we have to describe this, our last screen. You're saying, my goodness gracious, Mike, but you got to describe all this stuff because it all impacts the ration as far as that goes. There's your mature body weight again. The body condition score is 3. Now notice when it was 3, there was a rate of gain down there. Now notice those numbers are now the same. Jim, let's go back, put 3 up there again, and 3.0, and now he really wants to make her skinny. 3.0. Now you'll notice as we come down here that it's going to gain a pound a day. So eyes wide open. It's huge. This is a powerful one. This is very powerful. If those two numbers are different, then the computer is going to gain weight on you. And let me tell you, a pound of body weight is going to take you about 1.5 pounds corn to get the job done. Days pregnant is important because once you get out at about 180 days in pregnancy, now the pregnancy requirement starts building, and every day it gets slightly higher because it's a curvilinear relationship. So the last 2 days that a cow is carrying a calf, it takes a lot more nutrients because the calf is so much bigger than the first 2 days that she got pregnant. And so now you can see it looks like we've taken, now Jim is going to go back and change one of those two numbers, either put it back at 3. Let's go to the bottom and put our target at 3.0 because my target body weight should not be 3.0 or my cows. Let's put it that way. And now you can see we're back to 0. Days to gain, achieve the growth rate, 280 days, not a factor. There's nothing happening there. There is no growth there. But if it was a first lactation cow, something would pop in there and you would see it. So now Jim has described all his cows to us, and we are set to go. And
now we're back to adding feeds.
Back to feed. So now we're just going to add, today we're going to only add 3 feeds. So Jim will demonstrate how easy it is. We're going to add corn silage. Right. And so he can get that a couple different ways, either by going down there and selecting it, or he could type the word corn silage in. Right. We have 3 choices here at this point. We're going to go normal. We'll just go normal corn silage there. You can see in a minute or two, we can change that if we have to. Next, we're going to put in alfalfa silage, but there is no alfalfa. It's legume. So it doesn't, at this point, we're not sure it's alfalfa, clover, lespedeza, whatever the case is. And we're going to go with mid-maturity, just mid-maturity. Is that okay with you? Mm-hmm. Mid-maturity, we'll put that in there. Notice he's building his library now, and we're going to put in shell corn. And
a different way.
So he's going to go to grain now.
Well, go to all feeds and you show
what you got there, huh?
We can do corn. Oop. Yeah, I shouldn't have had her. Hang on.
Okay. And we're going back to the master library. And here we go again.
Corn.
Now notice as Jim is picking these out, look at the choices you have. I mean, like almond hulls. Those of you in California are pretty excited about that, but I don't think us in Illinois are very excited about almond hulls. And if you're in Florida, you'll see citrus pulp. So we're going to look at the corn. We're going to go corn ground dry. Cracked means what? It would have lower energy density because it's not digested as well. High moisture corn is different than steam flake corn. So we'll talk more about that next week, but makes a real difference as far as that goes. Now we got soybean meal, and notice we've got expeller, which means that we have wrung it through a wringer to get it out, so it won't have quite a more fat in it. So we've got two different expellers. That would probably be something like soy plus, soy best, soy pass, and we're going to use solvent 48. Solvent 48. What's the difference? The difference between solvent 48 means the fat is less than 1%, and the difference between 48 and 44 is the soy hulls have been taken off, which means doesn't have as much fiber. If you're feeding chickens and pigs, that's a big deal. Our dairy cows, a lot of us buy soy hulls because they're a good price, and we add it. We can also go roasted, raw soybeans as far as that goes, and of course, soybean silage is a possibility as well. So now we got those two feeds we've added. We've got the other two forages there. Jim said, take it, and there we are. So now we have it set up for our cow.
And always save.
And always save. Jim saves. Now we got a different size cow than we had in the last cow, Jim. So which ration do you want to build? So we want to build off of this one?
Well, you tell me.
Well, it doesn't make too much difference. Let's live dangerous. Let's go back to the old one we had, because I think that's 1,300. Or we can change our cow, but now we got some more work to do if we're going to do that.
All right, so get rid of this.
So Jim saved it. We're going to go back to the.
No, I haven't saved it. No.
Yeah, so I don't need to save a 1,500-pound cow. I know you Canadians are in love with this cow here, but we no longer are in love with big Holstein cows. So now Jim is going to say not save it, and it's gone. It's gone. Which means that we have to start all over again, or he is going to go to a saved file. And now you can see this is the ration that we're going to work with the rest of this class for the next 5 weeks. Notice it's a 1,300-pound cow. We could change that. There's all the specs. You can see lactation number, days in milk. You can see
70 or 60 pounds of actual milk and target of 70.
Okay, so we're gonna build it for 70 is what we're gonna end up doing at this point. Notice the dry matter intake there is sitting at, and that's for, I'm pretty sure that's for 60 pounds, is it not, Jim? That targeted dry matter.
The dry matter intake would be what they're saying, and you're saying that they're actually gonna eat 50 pounds.
Yeah, I was looking at it at the other one. We had the big cow when we had the 1,500-pound cow.
They were eating a lot more than.
So let's go back and put in 48. We'll put in 48 there, Jim. So Jim's going to put in 48 in there, and now you can see it's predicting a slightly low.
No, the prediction. You're not going to change the prediction unless you change the actual milk,
right,
or the body weight.
Right.
So we have a lighter cow at less milk, which is why it's so much lower.
Much lower. Okay, so here we are. Jim, we're happy with that?
All right.
Okay, so now we're almost done for today. Today is a very easy day for Jim and I. If you got some questions, don't be afraid to bring them up. We went through something too quickly, or you said, what was that, Hutjens? We go. So here.
Since we're here real quick. So if you needed to tweak this, you can go into feeds, nutrient composition. If you click here, here's where you can tweak this feed if you wanted to for this ration. This doesn't change it in the feed library, but would change it in the ration.
So we're sitting at corn silage normal, and let's just have fun down there. Notice, let's go to the bottom where it says starch, Jim, towards the bottom.
Right.
And remember, this year Illinois has got a big, so let's make that 36%. So he's just going to dial it up 36%, and that's the only change we're going to make here. So we're okay.
All right.
And he can hit okay on that one. Now we could also go in and let's go and show them right now because it's easier. We got time. Let's go down to the bottom where it says carbohydrates. And we're going to click on that. And now we're going to go up and see our corn. And there it is. You can see my corn at 36. Jim, let's go back and change that now to 32 again, just for fun. So Jim is going to here. He is going to go over and he is going to change that right here. You can change it right here on the screen, Jim, if you want to. And click on that one right there and make that 32 and save it. And he's now saved it. And so now there's two ways of doing it. So he may go to the big table. I normally make my changes here. And so you can see I could change the starch here very easily. We're back to our normal.
Did you want to do your initial, normally you do your initial forage and corn soybean.
Oh yeah, we're going to do that right now. Okay, so now we're going to go back home. So Jim's going to go home. That takes me back to the front page. We want to be there for two reasons. You'll see here. Here's your first thumb rule. 2%, a nice thumb rule, 2% of the cow's body weight is forage dry matter. So if we take 2% of 1,300 pounds, that's 26 pounds of forage dry matter. And so we're going to split that 50-50 on a dry matter base. So that means Jim is going to be putting in 13 and 13. 13 and 13. So that's our forages. So we're just using thumb rules at this point. Now, we're also going to use thumb rules for our concentrates. And we'll see how good thumb rules are. I have no idea where this is going to go, Jim. We're going to go down here. Basically, we'll say for Holsteins, on an as-fed basis, the thumb rule is 3-to-1. So it says 70 pounds of milk, 3-to-1. That's about 23 pounds of concentrate as fed. That means 16 pounds of corn. He's going to put in 16 pounds of corn there. And he's going to put in 7 pounds of soybean meal. And by thumb rule, it says that we have put in on the bottom. Let's go down to the bottom where it says amounts of dry matter. We have using thumb rules. I've got amount of dry matter is 46 pounds of dry matter, and the requirement is 47. That's really pretty good. So using thumb rules, hey, I've kind of solved my first step on dry matter intakes, and we're pretty happy. Now, just to have fun here, we're going to have fun. We're going to go over and take a look at.
Save.
He's going to save.
There's a save button here. I would suggest saving after each step, especially if it's something that looks good. Save it.
Save it. So, which button did you do again, Jim?
The little. I don't know how many people know what a floppy disk looks like anymore.
I know what it is.
But it'll look like a little floppy disk. And if you make any changes whatsoever, so let's say I made this 7.1 and then click off of it, you'll see that it turns to blue again. And whenever it's blue, you know it's not saved. So something to
I didn't know that. It's always good to take this class from time to time. That was supposed to be 7. We're back to our 7 pounds.
Right.
Okay. Well, let's not go there first. Let's go to let's just see what we have here. Notice on this sheet here, the net energy down at the bottom. We'll go right down to the bottom, in the bottom row down there, where it says net energy mcals per day. You can see that it says we are supplying 34.5. The requirement is 32, so we're over 2.5 mcals more, which means that cow would gain about a pound a day with this ration here. Let's go over to crude protein, and lo and behold, Jim, we got crude protein coming out of our ears. We almost 2 pounds of extra crude protein, but the number we want to look at is metabolizable protein. More about that in 2 weeks. You can see I'm a half a pound over in metabolizable protein. Of course, you can see we have no minerals in here yet, so the minerals are going to look really, really goofy at this point. And you can see our fatty acids there is about 2%. That's the normal background fat there.
And just for students, real quick, we're going to talk about this later more. If you want to down and dirty where you're at, the nutrient balance will give you a quick indication of where you're at. So you can see we're close to dry matter intake, NDF, and we're over on effective NDF. Crude protein, as Mike said, we're way over on crude protein. Metabolizer protein we're low. And of course, calcium and phosphorus were under because we haven't put any in.
So that's 100%. So ideally, in a perfect world, if you're going to get an A plus on your final exam, whoever does this the cheapest and gets pretty close to 100 is probably going to get the A plus in the class here. So that's kind of interesting to take a look at. Let's out of fun. Let's just look at carbohydrates. That's always kind of fun to look at. And you can see that we have 31% starch in this diet. For some of you who took our class last spring, you know that's really high. The sugar you can see is less than 1%, and that's because there's really no sugar sources coming into the diet here at this point.
Do me a favor, click on the Spartan.
Want me to click on Spartan?
Or better yet, take the mouse all the way down to the bottom screen. All the way down, all the way down, all the way down. To the very bottom.
Okay, my screen here?
Yeah.
Okay. Something's going to happen here, gang. Hang on.
No, move the all the way down.
Okay. Okay, we did something here, but that's good. That's good. Let's just take a look at our fibers for fun. We'll click on our fiber box down on the bottom here. You can see all these boxes over here, and we're going to come down every one of those boxes in this class here. So fiber says, well, what about the fiber in this diet here? Well, you can see NDF is at 29%. So Jim,
Go ahead.
here's 29%. So you can see 20, that's a good number. It's a pretty hot number, actually. Here we come over here to lignin. That number should be between 3 and 4%. So it's a pretty hot ration. That starch would indicate that. Here's ADF. I like ADF. I like this number around 20. In fact, the number I want here is 30. I want this at 3.5. I want this at 20. That's bingo, as we'd say. That's a kind of a magic ration as far as that goes. So again, not a bad looking ration on fiber. We at this point as well, and so that's kind of where we're at now. Jim, we're going to go back, and you're going to go back and do it. Remember, this is 26 pounds. Okay, now my thumb rule is in Illinois, I want 2/3 corn silage and 1/3 alfalfa.
Do you want to look at R&R before we do this?
Oh, that's a good point. Let's look at R&R. Thank you, Jim. I knew that as well. I just seen he was awake over there, and he is. Here's a nice little symbol up here called R&R. I love it. I love it. This is, or it stands for ratios and relationships. Powerful tool. So how much dry matter? About 3.7% of the cow's body weight. That's pretty typical for the production. Here's my feed efficiency, 1.3. That kind of sucks, but remember, we only got 70 pounds of milk here. Now look at this. This ration actually is balanced for 80 pounds of milk and protein 86 pounds of milk. So it's really, really unbalanced as far as that goes here at this point. Here are my feed costs, and we haven't updated our costs. We'll do that a little bit later on in the class here. But here's my income over feed costs. That would really suck with today's environment. That needs to be about $10. In Illinois right now, if we're going to make a living, that needs to be at $10. That's why things are a little ouchy right now. For some of us, this will be a useful one, looking at lysine methionine ratios. That's a really good ratio, by the way. That's a very good ratio. More about that in 2 weeks. A couple different ratios sitting up here as well. This is a 56% forage diet. It's pretty good. Very common, 55, 56, 58. In the future, if you got BMR, corn silage, and low lignin alfalfa, this will be over 60. This number will go over 60. And here's all the environmental factors that right now, Jim and I, or at least I'm not paying a lot of attention to it, but 10 years from now, the government's going to come in and say you will not be allowed to excrete in terms of where I'm capturing 32% of the phosphorus. I'm losing almost 0.2 of a pound of phosphorus. And we don't even have the ration balance yet for phosphorus here, and this will be important as well. So that's a really neat block. The number I like to look at is this feed efficiency number. I like to look at percent of body weight. That's not a big number. This is the big one right here. This is really big. And so when we start building this ration next week, we're going to start tweaking these numbers and getting all these numbers hopefully looking about right as far as that goes. Okay, so now what we're going to do, because we're done, unless we get some questions, we're done here today. But Jim is now going to take over, and I'm going to to keep my hand off the mouse. And basically, my diet's Illinois because that's what I want to build on. Otherwise, weird things will happen. I want 2/3 corn silage because it's cheaper than alfalfa is right now, which means I'm going to have 26 pounds. Let's put in 20 pounds of corn silage on a dry matter base. And that means I got 6 pounds of alfalfa left over here. And now you can look at your bars over there and you can see they are starting to move on us just a little bit as well. My proteins looks a bit different as far as that goes on it. And we will tweak that. So this is the ration that we will start with next week. And next week we are going to go back, and now you can see this ration now energetically. We went up because I had more corn silage in there. Allowable protein stayed up, and you say, oh, wait a minute, Hutjens. That computer really screwed up here because you took alfalfa out of the diet or legume out of the diet. You put corn silage in, and protein allowable milk actually didn't change at all. How did that happen? And the answer is what? I asked Jim, but he would know that answer. Remember, I have all that starch in there now, and that drives microbial amino acid yield. So a lot of things are happening here, even though intuitively we said that protein should have gotten really negative or much closer to zero. The answer is because amino acid synthesis coming off of the corn grain in the corn silage. And remember, this is Illinois. This is not really good corn. It's 32%. It's pretty average. Most of us now are in Illinois, and parts of the Midwest are going to be talking Iowa, Indiana, Ohio. We're going to be talking 34, 36% starch. And then Jim, out of our farm here at the university, they high chopped, which means they left 20 inches of stubble in the field. Guess what that does to starch concentration? There's going to be 38 or maybe 40% starch. And that has tremendous effects as far as that goes. And now the other number I'll look at, you're saying, well, gee, on the protein, Mike, let's take a look at this one. Let's see what happened here. And now look at this one. Boy, you and the vet and the dead trucker should become buddies, because now this ration is sitting at 36% starch. Yikes. You're going to kill cows. You're going to kill cows. And we're going to go home over here, and we're going to still see that even though, notice, we still only have about 3 extra mcals of energy. The previous ration was 2. Remember, the starch was much more meaningful. So this one didn't help me at all in terms of saying how much fun or danger we have. So again, you can see over here, we're still sitting there with pretty much the point says the cow should be able to eat this. This cow should be able to eat this diet that we have listed up here. And the total amount of dry matter is 46.5 pounds roughly, and roughly 94 pounds on a wet basis because of all that corn silage in there. So, do we have any questions from our students out there? How's that for a quick overview? Hopefully, you're comfortable enough that you know how to set up a ration. If some of you, what I would hope some of you, it depends how many monitors you have and you're listening, but once we get going here, in a perfect world, you should have this ration on your screen. So, if you haven't done that, write those numbers down so then you can stay with Jim and I, because tomorrow, a week from today, we're going to look at energy. And now we're going to get that starch thing solved. We're going to solve anything else that needs to be fine-tuned as well when we look at energy as well. So this is the basics. So I would argue those of you that have downloaded Spartan 3, and I think everybody's had good success doing that now. If not, let us know. But I think the folks in Belgium solved that for us. Then you should have on your Spartan 20 pounds of normal corn silage, 6 pounds of legume silage, mid-mature. That's important. Mid-mature, corn grain, and these are all book values now, and 14.10 pounds, and you can see 7 pounds of as fed. Now remember the thumb rule. One of these thumb rules is dry matter, forages, and for Holsteins and brown Swiss, it's 3-to-1 as fed. That's the beauty of this one over here. And Jim, you go down there and help our European folks out a little bit. Jim's going to go down and convert that over here to kilograms. And bingo, there we are. Now we got kilos of grams. See how pretty slick program, I must say. All programs can do that, of course, but pretty neat as far as that goes. And of course, now you get to use this one for 120 days. Is that right? 120 days free. So when the class is over, for some of you dairy farmers out there, hey, go to it. You got nothing else to do this weekend. Put your ration in and see what it looks like. It'd be kind of fun, and then we can diagnose it as well. And if you have a really tough one, then you can. If you really got a big question, there's a way Jim will tell you how you can send it to us, and we can diagnose it for you as well, and then tell you what we think of your ration. Jim, it looks like we're down to our last 2 minutes. I don't see any questions on the screens at this point, or screen at this point. We should be done. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, folks, that's it for this week. Again, remember, you got about 7 modules that you should listen to. It's pretty fast. I think it's about an hour and 10 minutes. Remember, by next Sunday, get that dry matter homework in, or certainly the quiz. Make sure you do the quiz in the form, because they close Sunday night. You're done. You can't get those points. So you students, you're all kids. You're all younger than I am. If you're in this class for credit, or you're a veterinarian, or you are going to get a certificate of completion, you don't dilly-dally around. You can always catch up on the homework, but I want you to get that done by next Tuesday on dry matter, because I want to discuss a couple of the questions. There are a couple of points to be made there as well. With that said, Jim, I think we'll just sign off, and we've used our whole 59 minutes. We have a minute to spare. Have a good one. We'll see you next week.